Mike Owens here. They're joined by the BBC with the BDE. Brian Campbell, one half of the award-winning Morning Combat, who's here to break down a fantastic night in Anaheim, California for UFC 298 with me. Brian, always a pleasure, my man. How are things with you today?
Yeah, man, always a pleasure to talk with the great Mike Owens Media. And I've got to say, for a slow start to this combat calendar year, as it normally is, 298 kicked us right in the hole where we wanted them to, right? That was good business.
Mm.
Entertaining, action-oriented night of fights. Fired up to talk to you about it.
Well, I want to take the conversation in a little bit of a different direction because the eagerly anticipated news of the UFC 300 main event was released on Saturday night. Alex Pereira taking on Jamal Hill for the light heavyweight title. Your reaction to the longer awaited news?
It's tough. It's tough. Is this a good fight? Yeah, it's a very good fight. It's an all action fight. It's one of those tropes that I always fall in love with in combat sports. The same trope that arrived, by the way, in Ali versus Frazier 1, or even McGregor versus Nurmagomedov, which is the former champion who's never lost his belt in the cage against the new man who's sitting in his chair. You got to love that on paper to begin with. You've got to love that as much as the light heavyweight division has lacked an identity post John Jones, what we have gotten is a hot potato belt, all action madness, and unfortunately a string of injuries which stripped two consecutive champions. But we know the makeup of people like Jamal Hill and Pereira. We know what type of fight we're going to get. In the end, we're probably going to be satisfied, entertained, and 300 still has a chance from start to finish to contend in the idea of the deepest or the best or the most celebratory cards in UFC history. I don't want to do all that big setup to then give you but actually, but Mike, but actually, the way that this all came together is disappointing.
Mm.
It made it look as if the UFC did not prioritize the main event for this card, did not. I don't know. I don't know where to go. Did not what? I don't know. They've got stacked 298 card that just finished. 299 in Miami is ridiculously stacked for a regular pay-per-view. We've got fight nights from Mexico City to Saudi Arabia to Noche and the Sphere that are supposed to blow us away. 300 as it stands right now is pretty damn awesome. But there is that part of me as a fan, the same fan that grew up watching everything from Leonard versus Hagler to WrestleMania 3, the event, the event, the event.
Mm.
When you have people in the marquee that demand your attention, think GSP and Brock Lesnar at UFC 100, right?
Mm.
It's the idea that 300 is something extra, extra, extra special. So I would have liked in hindsight had the UFC prioritized this decision, made sure that the people in the main and co-main events are the stars of the moment. I would have loved to have seen McGregor in there, Adesanya, whomever you want to name, really regardless of their situation in the moment and their own title picture. 300 to me is about a celebration of the roster at that moment. Where is the company at? What we are getting is a deep and potentially amazing card. Let's not lose sight of that. But what they ended up choosing from the title fights, at least, certainly don't look to be the first pick, right? Would I've loved a breakout star like a Sean O'Malley up there? Sure. Would I've loved an Ilia Topuria who just
Mm.
became overnight, one of the biggest stars in this game? Sure. We're going to get what we're going to get. But I'd be remiss if I didn't at least mention I did expect a little bit more from the company to blow us away, especially after taking so long. And then to hear Jamal Hill just basically mention, hey, man, this all came about a day ago, and look
Mm.
where I am. Here I am. It's what I'm feeling like a fan. This
Mm.
came about a day ago, UFC. I mean, I know the cupboard's a little bare. A lot of people are busy or injured or coming off defeat, but give me a matchup that sells itself. That's not what this card is about. This card is about the overall depth. And I am happy and here to tell you the overall depth is fantastic and potentially historical. I just expected a little bit more buzz to make April 13th the absolute can't miss event that I always hoped it'd be.
It felt like in the last 2 or 3 weeks there was a core group of about 6 to 8 names, and I won't go through them, but I think we all kind of have an idea of who those names that were being discussed were. And as you mentioned, quite surprisingly, Jamal Hill wasn't on that initial kind of shortlist and ended up being the main event of such a big
Well,
card.
Mike, we didn't know if he was going to be healthy the last time his coach
Exactly.
spoke publicly. It was June or July, we thought.
Yeah. Well, that was to my point is of that kind of core group that we kept here and those kind of names that we thought were in potential. What matchup do you think would you have gone for in theory?
Look, I think O'Malley going against Vera, even though that's not the best matchup in what we consider probably the best division at bantamweight, I think there's enough juice and celebrity on there with it being a rematch and Sean O'Malley looking to run back his loss that could have been main or co-main event, and I would have been perfectly happy. Oh, it's going to main event UFC 299, so I'll shut up. But I think the middleweight division is so red hot right now that you could have taken literally any spectacular matchup in that core elite group around the title. And I think you would have been justified here for either main or co-main. And what I mean by that is it didn't work out that way because the UFC had closely scheduled these recent fights against one another. But right now to have Israel Adesanya against either Dracus du Plessis for the championship, which is we've already seen the beginning of a little rivalry forming between them and the time that they faced off in the middle of the ring, or DDP against Strickland 2, or Adesanya versus Strickland 2, or right, like you know where I'm going with this. Insert Khamzat Chimaev, which almost happened, by the way, it seems, but oddly in a welterweight title fight suddenly. Insert Bo Nickel if you wanted to go crazy. My point is really this division's red hot. Any iteration of those at the top, including Robert Whittaker, Paulo Costa, who just fought a couple of days ago, would have been great to really showcase that division. And if the UFC was panicking, which they were, Mike, it's obvious that they were. As much as I wouldn't like it forced in, you're telling me Adesanya versus Pereira 4 or
5,
6 or 7 or 5, wherever we're at in the math, however you want to count all their meetings. To me, that is such a slam dunk, extra special, stop everything. Pereira's the light heavyweight champion. We've seen Adesanya move up before and come close, but come up empty. We've got the intense, amazing rivalry, including 2 consecutive knockouts from either man. But then Adesanya loses his own belt immediately after. There's so much drama and uncertainty. I really think Adesanya versus Pereira 3, 5, 7, 9, whatever you want to call it, could have been exactly that fight too. I didn't want Pereira in there against Tom Aspinall for the interim heavyweight title because that would have felt forced to give somebody to have the chance to become the first 3-division champion in UFC history. You don't want it to be for an interim belt and a forced main event. But I like what your question's basically asking. I would have been fine with any of those middleweight fights. I would have been fine with O'Malley at the top. I would have been fine with Conor McGregor, which is a whole nother interesting topic of why he's not fighting. But I also would have been fine, as crazy as this sounds, with Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway as the main event for the BMF title. Even though the BMF title is ceremonial and a little pro wrestling-ish, the fact that they brought it back, the fact that they identified maybe the greatest action fighter of all time in Justin Gaethje in that spot right now against a guy in Holloway who is an all-time great and one of the biggest fan favorites this side of Chuck Liddell, right, or Randy Couture that we've ever seen, that would have been fine because that is a moment. It's a fight that doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it's like an all-star game fight. There's a celebrity factor. There's an all-action factor. That would have been fine. Seeing Jamal Hill in here and Pereira, the question becomes, has either man earned that spot? The main event of UFC 300, The answer in a lot of ways is no, or maybe if they had the right dance partner. If this was the co-main event or the third title fight, I'd be jumping through hoops for this. I didn't like the addition of the all-Chinese female title match on here because it's such a great fight that I felt like it belonged on its own in China, let's say, as a feature showcase. When you just jam it into 300, it felt like it didn't belong. But Mike, you know the type of names I'm talking about, the type of crossover names who are still close enough to the elite. Any of them would have been fine in the main event. But I just felt like as we got close to the turn of the new year, as UFC is lining up their calendar year, and again, they've done a very good job at these elite matchups, you would have liked that this would have been the one that they booked first, not last. And maybe Hill Pereira is only here because they couldn't make work or they couldn't justify working Leon Edwards versus Bilal Muhammad in the main event. Another fight, which is a great fight, but would not have belonged in the 300 marquee, the kind of thing that you're going to put on posters for the rest of your life. And before anybody says ABC, but what about Nunes versus Tate? That became the 200 main event, didn't it? Yeah, but the circumstances of how we got there. And in that moment, it was the only title fight there. It was fine. There is a responsibility here historically to sort of make these things super special. So using any of those names I would have told you, I would have been more than happy. But if this fight kills start to finish and it's got extreme depth, I'm going to be the one there in the post-fight show telling you guys, I was wrong here. This still lived up to what it could have been. But Mike, tell me you're not doing the same thing I'm doing, which is why the hell is Conor McGregor not fighting? Because if they would have announced the 300 main event involving Conor McGregor either in a Super Bowl commercial, which was like a rumor for a bit, right?
Mm.
Or just even in the press conference over the weekend, I feel like that's front page news across of all sports. And you would have really brought everybody into the idea that 300 is something that no one can miss, whether you've watched one UFC fight in your life or whether you're an absolute degenerate hardcore.
Mm. No, I completely agree. I do think maybe negotiations maybe broke down. I think that was more than likely the initial intention. I do agree with you as well with Pereira. Adesanya 5 was the pick that I had all along when people were asking me who was going to be the main event. I thought that made the most sense with the storylines that you kind of laid out there for us there. So it is a bit of a strange one that we've ended up in this position. Let's turn the conversation towards 298 and what happens in Anaheim last Saturday night. Ilia Topuria with the second round highlight reel knockout over Alexander the Great Volkanovski. Can you just kind of give me your assessment of the moment that Ilia created, maybe throughout fight week and maybe obviously in the cage on Saturday night? Give me your assessment of Ilia's kind of performance throughout the week and what he obviously did on Saturday night.
You know, he went from having all of us podcasters spending fight week debating over whether he bit off more than he can chew, debating over when you see these memes comparing some of the things he's done to that of Conor McGregor, from stealing the championship at the press conference to getting very similar tattoo patterns that a lot of us didn't really pick up on. You can see certainly how many fighters have been influenced by everything McGregor has done. But Topuria went during fight week from a situation where we're like, okay, we know he's capable of winning that title. He's very impressive, but he is fighting one of the best fighters in the game today, one of the best fighters all time, and a guy who I thought, look, even with the head kick knockout 4 months ago in a new division against the other best fighter in the world and in a division that's above his head on 12 days notice, can we forgive him? Like, you know, and see that even with this daunting 35 and over stat that my partner Luke Thomas rightfully points out there, the more times we're seeing these aging fighters, welterweight and below, enter title fights with that, you know, that 35-year-old stamp on them, that scarlet letter. I still thought, hey man, he's really going to have to show us, because Volkanovski really is that great. I didn't want to get caught up on the true star potential of Topuria, because look, I think as a journalist or a fan, you should be excited when somebody new arrives on the scene, makes bold claims, announces what could be, and then walks in there and does that exactly. It's like proof of concept to see somebody's vision come to full circle, and to see the way Topuria systematically broke down and then violently dispatched one of the greatest fighters, one of the hardest fighters to look good against, one of the hardest fighters to outthink, set up, trap, and lure into a shot like that. I think you have to appreciate even more what a perfect game, if you want to use a baseball reference, this was for Topuria. Yeah, he changed his Twitter account to champion beforehand. He posed with the belt. These are all things
Out of interest, Brian, sorry to interrupt, but where did you stand on all of that? Did you look at that as extreme confidence or maybe borderline cockiness?
Yeah, I thought it was cockiness gone too far. I thought some of it was a little bit too much. Oh, let's be fair. The criticism heading into this fight that we gave Ian Garry a lot too, which is like, man, you look special, but you're pulling a little too purposefully from the Conor McGregor playbook. I felt that a little bit about Topuria. Like, you're trying too hard to be the next big thing. It turns out he is the next big thing. It's true. So now I look back and I change that. But yeah, in the moment, it's sort of like, who's this guy think he is, right? Depending, you know, whether you're picking him or not. But again, to see the patience and the poise and the surgical execution in which he got out of there, one of the greatest fighters, and you see the calmness in him celebrating his moment. Then you see the celebrity outpouring from his adopted country of Spain, the connection to the famous soccer and tennis players, the Real Madrid soccer team, you know, congratulating him. You're really seeing true breakout star potential in somebody that the UFC can build behind. So from that marketing standpoint of having another vibrant piece in this sport, this 27-year-old is an absolute badass who represents a few different countries and cultures at the same time, can speak Spanish to the Latin America markets, can do so much. And oh, by the way, he proved to us that he's pound for pound elite already. This was a big handoff, a big changing of the guard. And I could not have been more happier to be wrong that Topuria really is that great, because we've seen so many times you can do it against certain levels. Sometimes you can even do it as high as the A level, but there are those aliens. There are those super greats of any given moment. But it's like, let's not forget who exactly Volkanovski is, was, and maybe still could be. Nobody does that to him. Makhachev did, but we explained it away. But nobody does that to him. That's how great Topuria is.
Mm.
So I'm sitting here going, yeah, happy to be wrong. Happy to see what the future looks like because we know the big names in this division. Anytime you get rid of a long reigning champion and you insert a new one, it's going to breathe life in there. Think of guys like Max Holloway who are kind of just waiting around going, where do I go? Do I go north or south? Do I wait on Volk? Well, Volk's gone for the moment. Here we are. And I want to see Topuria against everybody moving forward.
And I suppose to that point as well, we obviously have a massive co-main event between Yair Rodriguez and Brian Ortega, two guys who I imagine looked at that result on Saturday night and thought it was a good thing for their careers in terms of a fresh title matchup. When you look at Ilia, you look at his personality and also his fighting style, what do you anticipate his Topuria reign to look like, and who do you anticipate as his toughest matchup at the title level?
Great question. It's a very, very good question. I think, matchups like Yair Rodriguez are going to be very tough for the firework potential. I do expect him to come out of the Brian Ortega rematches, although I'm the biggest Ortega super fan, you've ever met in your life. Just love his demeanor and style. Zabit's not coming out of that bullpen anymore, right? The greatest featherweight that never was. It's going to be interesting to see. Look, this division feels like it's going through a little bit of reshaping. I just want to know, if I doubted Topuria's ability to go in and do exactly what he did on Saturday night after calling that shot all week, now we know we've got a true star. He's now reaching, he called out McGregor, but he was doing a McGregor move, reaching out and calling McGregor, which is the new thing already, which is you can see the knowledge within him of not only knowing that he's a star, but knowing how to execute that. So as much as I want to sit here and go through the rankings with you and sort of try to figure out who's the potential next level matchup that's going to be the trap fight for him. Again, he just did that to Volk, who nobody does that to. So I'm going to favor him over everybody, but I'm not really sure, given his true star potential, if he will stay at featherweight. I mean, will the UFC bend to his will and suddenly we'll see this summer in Spain, him against McGregor? I don't know. Probably not. There's, again, it's a lot of unanswered questions about McGregor that they tried to get out of Dana at Saturday's press conference. And it seems to hover around contracts, financials, the new UFC TV deal, a lot of conspiracy elements in there. But what if the UFC did take him up on his offer? What if they did say, pause featherweight for a moment, and you're going to go up for absolutely no reason other than this fight would sell, it's badass, and there's no bigger way we can stamp a potential next in this sport than to give them the biggest combat sports star of all time as their opponent. A guy who can still talk, probably can't still fight at the super elite level. I mean, we're pretty sure he can at this point. Certainly can make you care, though. I don't know that they wouldn't if he keeps winning or he keeps calling these type of shots. So as much as I'm interested to see if he can put together the type of reign that's becoming more rare these days, which is, those 5 title defense. Think of Volk. Volk just had a 5 title defense featherweight title reign, and it felt like 10 years he was on top. We don't see that a lot anymore. I don't know if Topuria can do that, but I am a little bit more interested to see if he can parlay his potential fame, badassedness, and the fact that does he have the type of ability that could carry up in weight in special circumstances should he need it to. I'm interested in that because, Mike, that's the new path to stardom. It's not really even new, to be fair, but it's not, let me go in this division and clean it out and show you how great I am. It's the Henry Cejudo methodology, right? Of how do I stack this performance on top of this opportunity, on top of this opportunity to get to that rare, really rare next level. There's very few times, if we're really being honest, there's times we see skill. There's times we see skill that tells us somebody could be that. But do you see the skill, the marketing potential, and that core belief? Let's be fair. What Topuria did in calling his shot and getting to the point where he is now, little McGregor-esque. I'm here to tell you that. So I don't want to hold him back from everything he actually could end up being, knowing all of that great potential. But yeah, man, line him up against all these featherweights in a row, because that's how we find out whether you're here for a short time or a long time.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. Co-main events, Robert Whittaker turned back the clock a little bit, proved some of the doubters wrong with his unanimous decision win over Paulo Costa. What do you think personally Robert Whittaker proved with his win on Saturday night?
He's proved that he still got it. That was a shocking loss to Dracus du Plessis. It becomes
Mm,
easier to understand the DDP loss, certainly, now that he's middleweight
mm,
champion. And now that a lot of us, including myself, happy to be wrong, looked at this guy, DDP, coming in as all muscle, all gas, no brakes. But come on, technique, come on, this or that. None of us, including Whittaker, thought that was going to be the result last summer. So to see him come out of that, put it back together, and at age 33, which is, I saw MMA On Point, our friends over there in the UK, in your area. I
mm,
saw a great video they put out working off of that Luke Thomas 35 and over stat, but really coming to terms with the idea that the great majority of great UFC fighters really start to age at 33. Actually,
mm,
that's the real line. That's the time. Whittaker had to take on a lot of damage against a very big and dangerous opponent to do that, but he did it. He still got it. He's still a threat to this title. And I think he still embodies what I've been calling him the last few fights, which is, living legend. That's the idea that somebody,
mm,
they're going to be in the Hall of Fame. They're an all-time great already. What can they add on to this now with what is left of their career? I think that's certainly who Robert Whittaker is. And by the way, this win showcased exactly who he is. Battle tested upon belief, right?
mm,
I don't want to. I'm probably the last person that continues to reference the 10 rounds he had with Yoel Romero because now they feel so long ago, like they were in like
mm,
the Reebok era or something. But, you know, very few people are coming through that. I know it cost him. I know he had to sit out a lot. The injuries have been rough, but this guy's been through everything, including now a humbling knockout loss to DDP that made a lot of us question, oh, wait, it's not just like an age thing. Is he too small now for these very large middleweights? I'm happy at least for Whittaker in getting this win that he fought the best version of Costa we've seen, because that's the second storyline that's just as important.
mm,
I think for the first time in a while, maybe ever, we saw a little bit more of a calculated Costa, game planning, like smarter. You know what I mean? I
mm,
mean that maybe we shout out the captain, Coach Eric Albarracin, but I've been a critic for a lot of Costa's. I love his athleticism. I love his power, but I don't think he always gives himself the best chance to win or succeed. And
mm,
he came and he brought the thunder, and Whittaker was able to walk through it because he is that battle tested and resistant, and obviously his technique, his speed is still there. Everything is still super elite. With its own turnover atop this division, now that Adesanya, the guy that he lost to twice, although Mike, the rematch, nobody talks about that. Whittaker kind of almost won that, kind of did in my eyes, right? But it's just my stupid eyes. Yeah, he's still here. I don't know for how long though. I don't want to
mm.
look over that. He had to pour it out a little bit for this 15 minutes. He had to take the heavy damage and push through it. But yeah, he did, and it was great to see. And do I think he'll get one more chance at least at that middleweight title to try to start a second reign? I do believe he will, and I do believe it will be deserved. And by the way, if it does come against du Plessis, that's interesting. Just as
Mm.
interesting as it would be, by the way, for me as a fan to see Whittaker right now, either against Sean Strickland, who he's yet to face at this level, or even a trilogy now without Asanya. It kind of makes
Mm.
things new and fresh and interesting. I actually think no chance it could happen due to the timing. But that's another fight that I wish UFC would have thought about for 300. Not as the main event, not as the co-main, but could you imagine having added Whittaker Adesanya 3 with no title at stake as like your pay-per-view opener, right? I mean, we're being greedy, but this is a greedy card, right? That reminds me of like, Austin and The Rock having a trilogy fight with no title stake just to go, hey, we got to see who's going to win the battle of each other. But yeah, the whole point is, did Robert Whittaker reinvent himself? Yes, he did. Does he, though, have enough of a window open remaining to get that belt? It's going to be fun to watch. I don't know that answer.
100%. A couple more from me, Brian. As always, thank you for your time. I want to talk about the featured fight next. Ian Garry comes off a split decision win against Jeff Neal in a, let's be honest, a kind of lackluster fight and overall lackluster performance from Jeff Neal, who maybe never pressed Ian Garry in the way he needed to get that victory over the line. When we talk about Ian Garry now, fortunately or unfortunately, we do talk about the outside the cage drama than maybe the in-cage performances, but it's
Mike, we
very
allowed to use the word cuck on your podcast? I'm just
we can
checking
we
up
can we
front.
can use Cook. That's fine.
All right.
What I wanted to ask though is it is pretty clear that Ian has took a heel turn, kind of I say unfortunate in the sense of it wasn't planned in the way that maybe Colby Covington took his heel turn. So I'm asking my question to you is Ian a full-time heel now? Can he come back from this? And if so, is that detrimental to his career?
I think he can come back from this. I think he's got a new battle, though, as I don't want to say disastrous, but as poorly as the last few months have been handled for him from a PR perspective, right?
Mm,
From the whole cock incident to people accusing him of being a bad training partner and teammate and, you know, filming everything. I mean, all that stuff that came with that, right? I think that he has done a good job for somebody who puts himself out there way too much. But, you know, who am I to say? I'm a 45-year-old dad with teenage sons, right? So I'm not the guy that's like, he's aggressively marketing himself and putting him out there as the next big thing, following in Conor's footsteps. And he's never, you know, denied that. He's always put out there that Conor's his idol and that's who he's following after. But like, fighting does have a way of quieting down a lot of that other BS. I mean, we don't even hold against Chimaev that he missed weight so egregiously in a pay-per-view main event that they had to restructure the card on like 12 hours notice because he went in there and he whooped up on Holland. And it's like, this is an unfortunate combat sports reality that you're only as good as your last performance. And when your last performance is strong, we do shut up and stop talking about that. This performance wasn't strong enough though. So that's why I say I don't even think we're going to be talking about the whole cuck thing that much longer. I think he came out and gave a performance that was good enough to win, just barely good enough, but it wasn't good enough to live up to what he's trying to do. That whether he's playing heel or babyface, he's an attention getter. He's a look at me now type guy. He's the guy that wants a camera team to be following him all around, wants his personal information out there. When you are that showy, I do think you need performances that are showy. I think you are demanding more of yourself. You're putting the spotlight on yourself. So I think he succeeded in changing the conversation. The problem is that the new conversation, I believe, is after that safe, boring, you know, sort of like, look, there's a survive and advance element to it that's impressive when you look at the totality of his win streak and the type of fighters that he's now escalating up against. But again, he's not a regular fighter. He's trying to portray that he's a special one, and he did not come through with a special performance. And even if he would have attempted to come through with a special performance but came up empty, we might respect that a little bit more. But if you're going to try to be McGregor outside the cage, you got to try to be McGregor inside the cage. And I think that, look, this also can go away. This too shall pass if his next performance is what we expect, what we have seen from him. Then we will shut up again a little bit about the outside the stuff and focus on what really matters. But I think for him, you got to find the middle ground. You got to find the middle ground between that performance against Neal, which he looked a little gun shy, found his angle of how to just barely get it done and was maybe a little too content in doing that, and being the flashy guy who then goes out there and delivers flashy head kicks or whatever it is to get your attention and get you out of there. I think if you're going to portray yourself the way he has, you got to follow through on that other side too. All this will get is people telling him that he's underrated, that he's boring, and will bring on some booze. But I don't know. I'm a pro wrestling guy at the core, right? So I actually appreciated the heel turn. I actually appreciated the comfortability on the microphone, the way that he sort of chastised the audience. If he wants to stay that road for a while, I think he'll succeed in getting more attention on himself. But I think long-term he is a babyface because I think people want to like him. He's a good-looking kid with a fun style. When the matchups dictate that, I'd like to see him focus more on the actual game and being the best he can be, and maybe not so much of us talking about whether his wife's ex-husband still lives with them or not. I don't want to be talking about that, Mike. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think we kind of all agree on that, really, don't we? I completely agree. Last one from me, Merab Dvalishvili. Yes or no, is he the most unique problem for the bantamweight division and specifically for Sugar Sean O'Malley's title?
Yeah, he is. I don't do too often that guy's going to win the title next. That guy's going to be your champion thing. And Luke Thomas just did it successfully with Ilia Topuria, and I give him a lot of credit for seeing that, knowing that, standing by that, believing that. But yeah, Merab is going to be the next bantamweight champion, no matter who comes out of the 299 main event. And I'm happy for him that he had that performance on this showcase against an opponent of that, you know, level of skill and recognition to do that, because he got rocked the same way Jose Aldo hit him with the same exact punch in that first round, lost a close round, and then absolutely turned that fight around with that unique weaponizing of that spamming offense, the constant pressure. And, you know, he's rounded out his stand-up game just enough to really feature the other elements of the game. It's almost Habib-like, right? Habib never became a pure and dominant striker. Did drop McGregor with a big right hand, did make himself respectable and found a way to use it to complement the rest of his game. I don't think Merab is as great as the great Habib, certainly not as controlling and dominant on the ground, but yeah, his unique element to his game, and he's 33 too in a small weight class, which is starting to get you in that. Whoa, is he running out of time? I think the best thing that happened to him obviously was O'Malley defeating his teammate Aljamain Sterling. So we don't have to get into any awkward conversations. He doesn't have to sit around and wait any longer. It's time now for him to fight for the belt, and I really like the UFC not wasting time. He's got a 10-fight win streak in the sport's deepest division, and he's beat 3 consecutive recent former champions and beat them all in wide plan A, doing exactly what he wanted to. Yes, there were times he had to maneuver and show us his adaptability, but for the most part, I don't care if he's got a plan B, C, and D, because his plan A is so great. You want to see everybody have to swim in those deep waters. He's going to make them do it. He's a rare and unique fighter, and I think he's freaking hilarious. Did I think there was too much at Zuck on the broadcast this past Saturday? Yeah, okay. I mean, celebrities are cool, but we're giving this guy the king to the kingdom here as like, sure, walk right in, have a fight against Elon Musk. Hey, we'll put it in the 300 main event or the Power Slap 6 main event. Your choice, Mark. Jokes aside, though, his ability to play into that, to slam Henry Cejudo down, to have full conversations with Zuckerberg, that's star-making type ability. And I think those that really know about Merab know how hilarious he is and know that the language barrier is not a barrier at all. Look, this guy's not going to have a Topuria level turnover in terms of becoming an overnight star, but he also might be champion for a while because of this style. So I want to see it. I want to see his age 33 to 35 window and see exactly what that looks like. That could look like him coming forward on the prediction I made to kick off this year, that if anyone has the potential to be fighter of the year or the most potential, I do think it's Merab. That victory showed us that. I'm very happy to see that, because that is a hungry, ready fighter who rises to the occasion when the moments matter. And that's what you want to see out of a great fighter.
Yeah, no, 100%. Brian, it's always a place to get your time. I always really enjoy either these preview or these review shows that we do. Thank you for your time as always. Wish you continued success for you.
Liverpool forever, Mike Owens. Yeah, baby.
Make sure to subscribe to the LowKick MMA YouTube channel for all the latest news, event previews, and interviews with some of the biggest stars in MMA.